Today's topic is the business of death. Hello, this is Ron Meredith with Mind Your Business. Today we're going to be talking with my good friend Steve Smith, or Steven Smith for his proper name. But today's topic is the business of death. And one of the things over my time in the financial industry and just finances, life insurance, period, is most people want to address the most serious part normally at the most inopportune time. And whether we want to admit it or not, death is a business. Life does go on. Families go on, even though there's a tragic loss of that individual. Life does go on. So I wanted to talk with my good friend Steve, because he was most definitely in the opposite end of the final end, what they say, the final stop of final disposition. There we go. Final disposition of the of life. So on my side, it's dealing with the purchasing of life insurance. Why life insurance is important to have. Purchase young, purchase when you're healthy, not only just for the price, but for the overall outlook of the family, to make certain that those that are left behind have the ability to make certain the children go to school, make certain the children and the wife and or the husband can maintain the same lifestyle. So Steve and I, we're going to just talk about it a little bit this morning and tell some funny stories, some true stories, some just situations from both sides of the fence here. And because what I wanted to really get across was the importance of planning. Over here in the not too distant future, we're going to have some conversations with some estate planners, some probate clerks, and just kind of really dive into this, the business of death, and why it's important for people to properly prepare, uh, not for them, but for the ones that they love, to make this transition of life and the circumstance of life to being as smooth as possible, if smooth can be a word and a topic that's used. So, Steve, good morning.
Morning. Hey, Ron.
Thanks. You and I have been knowing each other for a long time. We just sat up here and talked about a few minutes ago. We've been knowing each other for a long time. So
45 years, I think, is the number.
I couldn't
At
even
least.
count it. I couldn't count it high. I just knew it was a long time.
So if you've been telling anybody you're younger than 45, we're in trouble.
No, I had no. I proudly display that 56 number for sure.
Yeah.
Proudly display that 56 number, and that's what kind of got this thing kicked off. Is because the longer God blesses you to live, the flip side of that is the more you realize how precious life is and how short life is. So Facebook and all of the different other social media platforms, you wake up and somebody's putting on there, remember my family, remember my friend, and so just passed, and seemed like on a daily basis. But I started thinking about this. What happens to who's left? In selling insurance, I got a phone call actually a couple of days ago from a couple of clients. Their mother is terminally ill. Now all of a sudden they're saying, we need to get some insurance. You know,
Boy.
that's a little bit too late.
Mhm.
So your experience has been in the burial department.
You're right.
Most people don't realize that the funeral and the embalmment is one fee, and then you got another fee for the open and closing. I know years ago when I first heard about it, I'm like, how you gonna open the hole and just leave it there? Give me a shovel and I'll close it.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of different things. So you tell me some of the things that an individual should prepare for
Okay.
prior to coming to someone in the death care industry. We all know it's life insurance, but tell me some of the things that they should prepare for, because you and I have been saying we're going to have this conversation for a long time. So now
Yeah.
we sitting here and we got the conversation. So
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say that I'm a former death care professional.
how you going on?
However, as a former death care professional, it does not negate all the knowledge that I gained from 13 years in the industry and serving thousands. That's more than 999. Thousands with an S of families. Right. So death is the great equalizer most times. It's the thing that everybody's thinking about, but nobody wants to talk about.
That's true.
And often in my presentation, I say it's a shame sometimes that we plan more for the end of the month's bills than we plan for the end of our life.
Correct.
I talked to a lady once and her husband had passed. I remember this vividly. She's well into her 70s. And she said, I don't want to think about death, because she didn't want to buy the grave next to her husband. She said, I might get married again. And I said, Miss Jones, you're in your upper 70s and you're crazy. You don't want to be. And I said, well, Miss Jones, are you a Bible believer? She said, yeah. Steve, you know I am. I said, okay. If the Bible promised you 10, and you already on 8 or 9 years of grace, whether you want to talk about death or not, death doesn't require a conversation to come.
It's going to happen.
It comes regardless. We just want to keep putting it off. And in planning for death, you plan sometimes on the best day of your life for the worst day of your life.
Correct.
I've sat with some families with some incredible death situations where it's a fender bender. There are 5 people in the car, $400 worth of damage to the car. Everybody walks out without a scratch. But your daughter, because she sat in the center, the fender bender snapped her neck. And people, it can happen that quick. And it's amazing. I had a friend in the death care business that he said when he was to meet with a family, prominent funeral director, he's just a freak about the business. I mean, he's one of the best I've ever seen to do it, whether people like him or not. He's just a consummate professional. He said he would run to the parking lot to see what they drove up in. And he said if he saw a Mercedes, a Jaguar, a Lexus, or a Cadillac, he put his head down, or a BMW, he put his head down. He said because he knew they weren't going to have any money.
Really? So and which is true that I found in the life insurance business, people have optics. And since the majority of my clients are African American, I grew to understand the optics. And so you learn to talk to people a little bit differently. But I would say as time go on, I started using, when I talk to groups, I have a crystal sphere and an hourglass. And I would either display them either physically or on the screen. And people would eventually ask, what's the sphere and the hourglass for? I said, well, we all think we can look in the crystal ball of life and tell us when we gonna die.
Mm.
We all look at the hourglass and say, well, I see how much time I got. Or just like you physically got the hourglass, you can grab the hourglass and flip it over and give you some more time. But both of those are false. You know, just like you said about the BMW and the different cars. With the hourglass of life, when that last grain of sand drop, doesn't matter where it's at. Just like here recently, the guy was in the store standing in line, and then the kid just walk in and just shoot him, and he died. He said, "Baby, I'm gonna run up here to the store to get this part, and I'll be back home." He looked at that crystal ball because he knew he was just going to the store and coming back home.
Mm-hmm.
He thought he can predict the future, or
Right.
he knew the future.
Right.
When he got shot and he died on the spot, that last grain of sand dropped. Nobody would have ever thought that that was the last time that we were going to see each other. So that's how important this conversation is, to get people to realize, hey, you need to start paying attention to this thing. You need to address this. What are some of the things that, as a death care professional, you would have hoped people would have done before they came to you?
Well, in the cemetery business, there's various training methods, but everybody that has a planning guide, they show pictures of the wife in the cemetery with a cemetery planner with an umbrella on a rainy, muddy day.
Really?
They did. Every one of them. I don't care what company it is. But the funny thing is, I've stood with thousands of wives in the same situation. It wasn't that the money was the problem. It's that now the thing that they've talked about as a couple for many years and never done,
Okay.
all of a sudden she got to make those decisions by herself. And I've heard wife after wife cry, "We've always talked about this, and now sometimes you got to plan in the snow."
Yeah.
I ain't stood out there with people in the snow, in the rain. Husband, wife might not be right with mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Sister-in-law might never like wife. All that come out.
Yeah.
You know, I can write a book, and I'm going to write a book on death care, and it's going to be called Black Funerals, The Untold Story. Because I promise you, I've seen some situations. All of a sudden, it's not the money, it's all the decisions that are so final that had to be made. I've even seen a fight because Aunt Tootsie, Uncle Fester, and Uncle Lester are at an old cemetery behind the church in Mississippi.
Right.
And because the wife wants to bring her husband to somewhere near her house at a nicer cemetery where the cemetery ain't burning down and they don't look like it's sunk, they're mad at her.
Yeah.
So she has to plan against the grain of her husband's family. Oh boy, I got some stories to tell. But you gotta also, it's just things you gotta plan. Nobody wants to look forward to it. But it was so, in that earlier comment, I'm sorry. In that earlier comment I made, I planned once with a family for the death of their mother, and the wife walked in with a title. The husband was a big professor. The other person had an executive title, and about 6 titles. And everybody, they want to test. Well, when we go over there, we want to see if the cars are worthy of us. They want to test drive, take a spin in the cars to see if it's worthy of them. And these folks didn't have $2,000 to pay these folks. I said, well, you're going to write a check, right? Because it's three, four other couples. Oh
Mm-hmm.
no, that's on the funeral bill. And they really didn't have it. Middle class, let me define middle class. I had arguments all the time with the company that I worked for because let me define, they think people are poor. No. Middle class means that you got Charlotte in college,
Mm-hmm.
Michael's in college. You just paid the house note. You just paid car note number one. A big MLG and W bill comes.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, you just got your nephew Bootsy out of jail,
Okay.
so that's 500. And then the death happens unplanned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Middle class or not, middle class is relative.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, you
Yeah.
can have a big house, a big car, and just be caught in a
You
spot.
caught in the middle.
And death don't care what spot it leaves you.
Yeah. 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 And so that's part of where I've tried to have, because even though these stories happen or life happens on a daily basis, it does not happen to the average individual. So they've heard of their cousins, friends, mama dying, and there was a big fight, but it didn't happen to me. So I'm okay right now. And so my conversation to people is, let's plan so there won't be a fight. And one of the popular things now in 2022, and I guess started out 2021 and 2020, is GoFundMe. Everybody wants, they have people that die and then they instantly put up on GoFundMe, help bury my mama. Now, what got me into the insurance business growing up in the projects, we used to have people uh, going door to door, knocking. Can you have, or can you help us bury our mama, sister, brother, daddy? And that always puzzled me, but that's what life insurance for. And growing up, I used to think life insurance was expensive. Uh, so when I did get into the insurance business and found out, wait a minute, life insurance can be pretty cheap, $25, $30 a month, depending on the age and when you buy it and so forth. But I think it has more to do with people, like you said, just don't want to think about it. And they think, like, again, the crystal ball and the hourglass, they have time. And so I've always wondered, how can we, and how can I put together something that will shake people? And so with you being in the death care business, I said, maybe this can be one of the pieces that will shake people. And people say, you know what? I think I need to take this thing serious, because the next second is not promised to me. I think that I'm feeling good, I'm feeling healthy, everything fine. But all of a sudden, you get in the car and go to the grocery store. To go to the grocery store or to make a run less than 500 yards down, thinking again, my crystal ball told me I'm coming back. But you pull out and instantaneously, your life and your family's life is changed entirely. The question becomes, how will my family keep the house? Me and my wife already were struggling to make ends meet. And then I died. Now, me being a male, I always like to have to freely admit, like to kill off the wife versus killing off the husband, because we always get killed off. But we were already struggling making ends meet. So now, how am I going to pay the bills, keep the house, keep these kids from going off the rail? Because death affects everybody different. Uh, we were a two-income family, and that's what most middle-class people are. They are two-income families. The both incomes are required to pay these bills. So now all of a sudden, it's just one.
Believe it or not, my first month, but my first year in the business, I even know that guy's name, and correspondingly, his wife died about 12 years later, young. but it was the most heartbreaking thing. He built the house of houses, built his wife's dream home. Uh, he had a good full-time job, had a sideline insurance hustle, and doing some network marketing over here, just doing everything to build the house of the dream. They move in the house. He dies of a heart attack before the first payment.
Wow.
So that who plans for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And people judge wise. The wife knows that she can't keep this whole operation going. You got to save face professionally, but they don't know that sometimes the wife knows that they're not going to be able to keep the home. You're not able to keep the home. So she's got a myriad of things. I've had a lady once that cried over the fact that she took the garbage out.
Really?
And that sounds petty.
But she said,
Steve, I never took the garbage out. It's just new realities come.
Yeah.
I also always said, and this is something that's quite urgent. I grew up in South Memphis, just like you. And we'd have the little debit agents that go door to door and give bubble gum to everybody in the community. So we happy because all us little tank top wearing little bad kids then got some free candy. But they selling Big Mama the little debit policies.
Right.
So here we are 40 years up from that. Ain't nobody ever checked Big Mama's policy.
Yeah.
You go into the funeral home and the cemetery is a cash business.
Yeah.
You go into both of those, and then Big Mama's policy is worth $400.
Yeah.
And she's paid on it for 40 years. So first of all, please check your elderly loved ones' policies. You need to know. Those are discussions we need to have. That consummate funeral director I told you about earlier, he wanted to check his own grandmother's. What she had, just so, because he deals with it every day. And grandma thought checking her stuff meant that you were going to try to kill her. So grandma won't let her know. I knew one family that aunt was a hoarder and they couldn't find anything. And just faithfully, they had enough money to pay for it. And 6 months later, they found out what aunt really had. Everybody's not in that position.
And everybody is different. Because I had a close family member to have the conversation with their mom. And the mom was like, I ain't going to tell you that. I said, and they said, why not? That's none of your business. Oh, wait a minute. How you mean that's none of my business? At the most vulnerable time in my life, you want me looking for papers that you can clearly just say, this is where it's at. This is who to talk to. Well, I already got all that taken, but where is it at? How am I supposed to? I'm gonna tap you on the shoulder and you're gonna tell me why you're there. Oh, it's in the third drawer on the second shelf, and so forth. So you're right. Having the conversation is extremely important, and we don't, for whatever reason, don't want to have the conversation. And when we don't have the conversation, it leaves the entire family in turmoil. Now, I comically, when I do especially seminars for women, I would always say, wives, if you don't get the check that you want, that's your fault. And initially I'd get some pushback. They'd be like, well, what you mean? If your husband died, I ain't saying the check that you need, but if you don't get the check that you want, that's your fault. Well, how am I going to do that? If you've been married for a while and you can't figure out how to get him to do what it is that you want him to do, that's a whole nother conversation that we need to have. Or you need to have with somebody else. So, but you should be able to do this. And to show you how sensitive this is, I said, most people, if the wives want to join the 7-figure club when the husband dies. The wives have to be prepared for the husband to join the 7-figure club.
Yeah.
And so they'd be like, he can't have that kind of money and go out. That's the reason why he won't let you get the same check on him.
Well, it's a bad misnomer in the African American community that talking about death attracts it.
Yeah. I would
We
agree.
feel like
I
if
would
we
agree.
talk about death, that you bring it. We done bucked at church and got our little dance on, and here you go talking about some death. And those conversations are called courageous conversations.
Yeah.
Because if the Bible says it's appointed unto man once to die, that counts you. It's
Yeah.
not ever a matter of if.
It's always
It's
when.
simply a matter of when.
Yeah.
And we just got to be. You told me a story years ago about how you've had to deal with widows after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
But funeral directors in the funeral industry, it's a business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there are, I'm not saying every director, but there are some directors and some people in this business, because they say and define it at every death care school, that you're temporarily insane. How would you like to,
insane?
when a death happens, you're in shock. I don't care if mama's been in hospice for 6 months. When mama's finally gone, your wits are gone. Just like your body takes a blow, your emotions have taken a blow. Now, do you want to make your best financial decisions when you're temporarily insane?
I would probably say no on that one.
The funeral director is going to say, oh, you know you love your mama. I love your mama. Your mama, we're going to put her in that nice glass casket, and we're going to show her full body, and we're going to show her shoes, and we're going to have a dove release and a horse-driven carriage. You know she liked that movie, Imitation of Life. She cried every time she watched it.
So everybody black cried, walk by, yeah, mama.
Yeah. So it's just your best decisions come ahead of time. You're under pressure. The most intense week on a black calendar. It's death hits everybody differently. And I said once to a company, everybody has a right to be distinct. You wouldn't keep a Jewish person out for 30 days because they want to be buried by
3 days
or sundown. Sometimes if they're traditional, but in our norm, it's the most hectic week in the world because some people are just nosy. They finna call.
Yeah.
You got to deal with all the phone call. You got to deal with cousin Skip coming on the megabus who gonna pick him up and let him stay. You got all these people in your house, and you're under pressure now through COVID. You got to secure the church, because the church has been thrown a new norm since COVID. So it's just such a stressful week, and you're making some decisions just to get it over, to make it all in.
I would agree. So one thing we hadn't discussed: price. I know the sky's the limit, but what's an average price a person should expect to pay? And the reason why I'm asking that question is the numbers are all across the board. When I get people that call me that don't have insurance and saying, well, we don't know what we're going to do with mama. You know, I've sent a couple of people over to you and sent some people straight to the funeral home as well, saying, yeah, you might need to look at setting something up through them and kind of locking in your prices. But what should a good average number should be in kind of a description of what that entails, because we don't want people, to say, okay, well, we either gonna cremate them or let them go to the potter's field. Because
Well,
they
now,
still got that. But,
no, you can't go to the Potter's Field now.
what? The
You cannot.
Pottersfield charge you.
No, the Potter's Field got smart. There were people starting to have $7,000, $8,000 funerals, and then claiming that they were indigent.
Okay.
So they said, no, you're not going to do us like that. People started violating, having big funerals, and all of a sudden they would bury you as if you were indigent.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So now they almost want you to come in the bag from the hospital to qualify to go to the Potter's Field.
Okay.
And my own mother-in-law wouldn't talk to me about a grave. And she's my mother-in-law
Mm-hmm.
until we went to one burial at the Potter's Field.
Really?
It was so impersonal. They stopped us at a point. No funeral procession's gonna procession in there. We stopped there, and the directors left with the hearse, and they came back in less than 2 minutes. Now, I've seen a million gravesites. That's a 30, 40-minute process.
Mm-hmm.
In 2 minutes, they basically probably just pulled the hearse up, threw the casket in, and covered it up. And it was so impersonal. She said, Steve, I thought I didn't care. She said, but I do care. She bought the next day.
I think people traditionally you would always, I don't care, just put me in a pine box. I don't care, I'll be gone.
That's the story of men, but most of the women that love us, our wives, our mothers, our sisters, they're not going to want you in a pine box.
Yeah, exactly.
I laughed so hard this week because I learned a title from the Queen's Prince Charles Newton, the Queen Consort.
Yeah.
And then somebody came on there and said, kind of like on the Black funeral program where you have that special friend. And I hollered. Because a special friend could mean that you done had the bills, lived with the maid 30 years, gave her 4 kids. Women, if you're out there and you're a special friend, get your name on that insurance policy.
Get your insurance policy on that special friend. There you go. Before you leave tonight, sign this insurance policy because I want one. But and see, all of these things come into play because they're real life. We can say, okay, well, there shouldn't be another woman. There shouldn't be another man. I got all of that. But this is life. But you have children that still have to grow up. Children that still have to survive. Bills that still need to be paid. And I think that's, from the financial side, that's really the most important thing. Now, you're going to have to go. You told me that you had some time, so I ain't going to keep you much longer.
No.
Tell me one funny story.
No.
From the
see, you can get into point proving even with a funeral.
What you mean,
if you're the prominent family at the church,
mm-hmm.
everybody thinks that you're upper tier. That may not be your financial reality.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're going to save face and spend money that you ain't got to impress people that don't like you anyway.
Yeah.
And say, he sure look good in that casket.
Put him away good.
I while planning for my own mother, the director came to me, and he's a prominent name. I could give it to you, but I'm not. And he said, well, we can get your mom's picture all over this vault. That's the outer burial container.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, for me and my sisters, while we were there playing, I said, I'm grieving, but I'm not grieving that bad.
Yeah.
My mom's picture doesn't have to be on the outer burial container that somebody's going to see at graveside for 2 minutes.
And then you're going to put it in
put it in the ground. But if you don't have people, if you're doing it based on emotions, you need to do it when your mind's right.
Yeah.
And you think clear.
So,
but it's $8,000, $9,000. $9,000 would probably be the norm on the funeral side. I once knew of an upper end funeral home, in a traditional funeral home, that did a $18,000 service for what one on the Black side would have been around a $4,000 service.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get caught up.
Yeah.
But
so that's car,
The cars
The viewing of the body, the
yeah,
embalm.
yeah. Cars now are $450. A guy ate with us at the reception, and I'm like, he said, "Well, you still getting billed?" I said, "Well, dude, you gonna get your plate and you finna go. You ain't just finna be here laughing at the jokes." I like you and I
Yeah, yeah.
appreciate you going the extra mile, but at $450 an hour, you finna get back to the funeral home.
Wow, wow. So we got car not included. So we have the embalming, the casket, and transportation to the funeral home. I mean to the grave site. Then we have the open and close the procession there. So we got
Mhm.
$8,000 there, and then how much at
But
the
that's normal, Ron. What about your loved one being a little bigger and all of a sudden they get this oversized casket and grave sales are skyrocketing because we eat a little more. We like to laugh.
I never
All,
thought about that.
all the saints. The hole is a set amount. And
Yeah.
if you don't fit in that hole, guess what you got to get? You got to get another one next to it. Somebody
Really?
always wants to measure, well, it's just 1 inch over, but if it doesn't fit in this one hole, that means you get two graves.
I never even thought about that. For the oversized folks you got, I never thought about that.
Sometimes even you can be small in death and swell from a certain death. And then all of a
What?
sudden you can't fit anymore. Yeah, a lot of things happen. That's why I said I'm gonna work on this weight. I know you see a little extra pounds here, but y'all are not gonna put me in two graves.
But I'm gonna work on it. Instead of pushing back, why are you pushing back? Say, oh no, I
Because I
can't
hated
swell
to
up.
write it on the paperwork, Ron, because you got to say the name of the garden, the grave number, and then you got to write graves 1 and 2, and that's on paperwork.
Mm.
So that's not always an easy thing. I had people on my staff at that time that would say it's so cavalier. Oh, he in space 2 and 3. Shut up.
Okay. So that means that's if it's 800 to open and close, that's 1,600 because you got a bigger
Whatever
spot.
the price of the grave, you got open and close, you only open it once. So
Okay.
that doesn't catch it, but a whole nother grave has to be charged. And if
Wow.
husband and wife own two graves and husband take up two graves by itself, what if there's not a grave on the other side available?
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
then the only situation we got, if they want to stay, is to be stacked, one on
Oh, you
top
can
of the
stack
other.
them.
Well, they can, but a lot of people still feel negatively about that, Ron.
Mm.
They don't want that. I had a guy told his wife he was going to be laying on top of her for all eternity. She said, "The devil is a lie." She said that the person that's on the bottom is the one that dies first.
Wow, that's interesting. That is interesting.
Yeah.
Because and see, what I'm finding fascinating about this time, because we're going to do this again. Fascinating about this is there's so many aspects, but since this doesn't happen to us on a daily basis, we never think about it.
Can I tell you my weakness as a professional?
What's your weakness?
If going into houses, because I pre-plan with a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
telling a woman that she's going to need two graves, that was a weakness. Now I had one guy working for me. He could just say it,
Mm-hmm.
just wouldn't think, "Oh, you're gonna need two graves." That's that's a tough conversation to have.
Mm. Especially when the money is limited. Yeah, because that's where I find the difficult part, the stress, and we laughed and said wow numerous times here, but all of this, just like the old Bible verse in Ecclesiastic, where money answers all things, and the question becomes when you don't have the money, man, you got some problems on your hand, and nobody in the immediate family has any money.
And it doesn't make them bad, Ron. They could just be a week out.
Yeah, yeah, they can be a week out. And or if no one has the money, they can't see. You may have that because most families got their one rich relation. He doing well, he done retired or she done retired from 2 or 3 jobs and ain't got no kids. So now everybody says, oh yeah, we know we can go to so and so and they can do this, and everybody make all these promises. Don't worry about it. Once I get paid, and I'm gonna pay you back
So
$200-300 a month. We gonna do this. After that first deal, they'll be like, I don't even know. You're going straight to voicemail. Then you bust up families over money, and that's what I try to get parents to realize. What the child you think won't do, that's going to be the one that's going to act the biggest class.
Well, I unfortunately, in my whole career, when I first started, the guys told me, Mr. Steve, God sent you to us. God, we were just talking about, nothing but God. God sent you to our lives. In some kind of way, I hadn't collected all the money, and their mama got inside of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to make the call after mama is covered. Excuse me, we still a little short on this end. And these are the same folks that said, well, number God, God sent you to. He said, that's on you, partner. So believe me, a good cemetery man are not going to let one piece of dirt go down because your ability to collect once they're buried is nil.
Kind of like I saw mentioning that about what you just said. They had the clip on YouTube. No, not YouTube, Facebook, where the folks at the funeral home and the check bounced, and the funeral director go out there and just flat foot just snatch the body out of the hearse and snatch the body out of the casket, threw the body on the hood. Man, folks just falling out. When I'm looking at it, I'm laughing. I'm saying, oh, that check didn't clear.
Well,
that's what that is.
Most funeral directors will just put off the funeral until they get. I was like, I'm on the secondary end. I'm on the cemetery end because we're final disposition. But I tell them, you can't pay me and not pay the funeral home. Because if you don't pay, I can't get the body. You need a licensed funeral director to get the body. If you don't pay him, ain't nothing happening. So most of them are not going to put themselves in the position of having a bad check at that later date. That's because you're not going to collect after something.
I don't know if it was just for dramatic purposes or what, but I was just laughing. I said, okay. So money is the answer to all of this.
Well, funeral director can write the cemetery bad check.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
All right.
That's a whole nother conversation. So, but look, Doc, man, as always, I have enjoyed it, and the purpose.
I'm proud of you, Ron. Little old South Memphis boy turned out to be something very, very important.
Well, I'm glad that you like me a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm glad that you like me a little bit. But I'm hoping that everyone realizes from this conversation and conversations going forward the importance of having a good life insurance policy first, because his folks want to get paid. Having a good life insurance policy to address the future concerns and issues and needs of your family, because the ones that are left behind are extremely important and dependent upon you. You as a parent, you as an adult, you as a brother or sister, you're responsible directly or indirectly for the ongoing care and future of your family members. So we want to be proactive on these things versus just waiting to one day wake up and say, I get it handled, but then it's too late. So after all this said and done, it'd be shameless or remiss of me not to say, if you have any other further questions, reach out to the Financial Center and give us a call I'd be glad to sit down and talk with you, myself or someone on the team. But we'll sit down, talk with you, answer all of your questions, try to get you set up with a good attorney for a will if you need to have one put in place, a good tax guy to consult if you think that you may have some tax issues, cause we didn't even discuss how the IRS comes into play in dealing with your state after you pass. We're eventually going to have someone from the probate clerk's office to come in and sit down and say, okay, now that you're gone, we've got the horror of the funeral out of the way. Now you got the horror of going before the judge and making certain that your property is properly dispersed. I'm running into an issue now where the mom has been dead for 7 or 8 years or better, maybe longer, and the house is still in the mama's name. There are some issues that we have to get addressed and issues that we have to take care of. But again, reach out to the Financial Center, 901-334-1280, or you can check us out on the web. Somewhere on the screen will be the company's website. Set up an appointment with us, sit down and talk with us, and we're going to do our best to make certain that you and your family is taken care of. And again, Brother Steve,
appreciate you.
let's go on out here and make some money, man.
All right.
And we're going to be all right.
Good.
Y'all have a great evening.